All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop. We're talking about Janet DIY. So exciting. Andrew and I are here to talk to you about it. It's going to be fun. You guys have been getting a lot of emails from us today. So thanks for your attention to all of our emails. We have a lot going on with the beginning of the year. We keep trying to decide what emails can go out, what days. And there's so many things we want to tell you guys about. Sometimes we have two on the same day and also a webinar. So thanks everybody for being here. Let's see here. We'll get started here in just a minute. Just getting a few things set up. If you're just joining us, it would be great if you would hop over to the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. I see we've got people here from Ohio. Yeah, I'm here in Portland, Oregon. It is sunny and it's been kind of cold at night, but it's been nice during the day. It has to be one of the longest stretches of no rain in January in a long time in Oregon. Like, it is not normal for it to not be raining, and it has not been raining many days in a row, which is very weird. I mean, some of the mud has almost dried, which is very strange for Oregon in the wintertime. So who knew that you could have not mud? We're very used to it just being solid mud. So yeah. So anyway, it's not muddy for a second. Well, don't worry, you can still find mud. It is Oregon. There are muddy places because the sun doesn't hit everywhere, but not as muddy as you would expect. So, so many folks from so many places. Hi, everybody. Hi, guys in Kansas. Hi, Virginia. Hi, Washington. Hi, California. Oh, Kentucky, New York, Bremerton, Washington. Hey, Cynthia. Yeah, great to see you guys. Andrew, do you want to say where you are?
Sure. I am in beautiful Media, Pennsylvania, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And
Nice.
it's not muddy, but it is very snowy.
Oh, it's snowy. How fun.
Well, it was, I guess. There's a lot of snow on the ground. It's
Oh,
not falling anymore, but it fell over the weekend.
nice. How cool. All right. We haven't really had snow. It's hard to imagine that we're going to get snow this year because it's usually I mean, we don't even really have snow in the mountains here. It's been a really weird year for snow in the Northwest. So, or at least in our part. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get things started here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. As I said, it's always cool to know where you are in the world. If you're curious, this is a picture from a trail close to my house, also close to the office, where you can see Mount St. Helens in the foreground. And if you look really closely in the distance, you can actually see the very top of Mount Rainier, which is like all the way up in Washington State, but you can like see it peeking over from the view that I take that picture from. So I thought I would share that picture. A few housekeeping things today. We're recording today's session. I say that, and I'm just going to double check that we are recording today's session. Yay. Good job, us. So if you don't have a chance to take furious notes, you can just listen. We'll send out the recording after today's session. We would love for you to ask questions as we go. We're talking today about Janet DIY. We're going to go over how it works, why you might be interested in it, why we decided to build it, how people are using it. And you're welcome to put questions and we'll answer them as we can. And also, yeah, sometimes if we can't answer them right away, we'll get to them at the end. And then we'll probably have some materials that go out after this. We usually try to send out at least the slide deck. Sometimes we turn it into like a nice handout. We are having kind of a busy week at Mission Driven Data, and the team is deployed doing lots of different things. So I will say that like the handout itself might take us a couple extra days compared to usual, just because I have folks working on a lot of things right now. But if you're desperate for the slides, you can always shoot me an email and we can send them to you directly. So and you will eventually get a handout. All right. So you are in the right place today if you currently use Janet and you'd like to try out some more features. Or maybe if you don't use Janet now, but you're thinking about it in the future, or you're already planning to, or you work with folks who are using Janet, or maybe even Janet DIY, and you just want to understand what that is. Or you're just like a fun, cool person and you want to hang out with me and Andrew, because we would love to have you all here. So it's good to see everybody. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the why behind Janet DIY, what it is, how it works, the behind the scenes, how access is set up, what you can do with Janet DIY, and then how to think about whether Janet DIY might be the right fit for you. And then how to get started. So this is a very like practical kind of thing. We're going to give you the behind the scenes, and we're going to talk to you about how this all works. I did want to mention that you probably heard something about Janet DIY already, because we did something kind of new this time where we had an official beta testing process for Janet DIY, and we got lots of really positive feedback about that. But both from our team, it gave us a chance to really vet all of the features of Janet DIY and make sure we made all the materials really easy to understand and addressed any hiccups that came up. And it also was a nice way for agencies to be able to give feedback and input. So if you didn't get to participate in that beta, but you love doing stuff like that, I wanted to encourage you to consider participating in other beta projects that we have coming up. We're just going to be rolling them out because we're doing so many cool things. So keep an eye out for that. So really quickly, I'm Ginger Bandeen. I'm the founder and CEO at Mission Driven Data. I'm a social worker. I started our company 7 years ago now. Oh my gosh, 7 years. So back in 2019, we work with agencies all over the country. As you can see from everybody here in the chat, and I just want to say that I feel very lucky to be supporting such good people out in the world doing good things and helping their communities. And I feel very lucky. So, and also why I'm lucky is because I have an amazing team, including Andrew Sather, who is here. Andrew, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm Andrew, and I'm the director of product development. I started working for Ginger a little after she started working for me when I worked at an agency. I worked at an agency for about 5 years, and I hired Mission Driven Data to solve some of our data visualization problems. And I am really lucky that she saw something in me that I did not see um, about the kind of things that I enjoyed building and how those might apply to a bunch of agencies across the country. That's what got me here.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'm so glad I got to swoop Andrew because I could tell he was going to change things for everybody and be so great at thinking about how. I mean, I think that's one of the magical things about mission driven data, if I can break a tiny bit, is that we hire people who've been in the shoes of the agencies we're trying to serve so we can think of things that would be helpful to them. So you're going to hear more about this as we talk about why we decided to do this Janet DIY thing. But yeah, I feel so lucky. So mission driven data, in case you don't know us, but I think most of the people who are here do know us, but we basically do three things. We have data tools for EHR users. Everything is Janet. Janet is everything. Janet is our tool that helps agencies pull data out of their electronic health records. And also now Janet is actually like basically a wraparound data model that you can pull data from all different systems. You can set up automations, you can do things like appointment reminders, you can send out surveys. It's sort of like this sort of data hub for all the data going in and out of your organization. And that has a lot of that evolution is because we've had Andrew here helping us build out more and more features and also starting to branch into more EHRs besides Credible. Credible is where we started, but we also work with other EHRs now. We also host a free online community where we bring information to folks. So that is for anyone. It doesn't have to mean that you use Janet or you even use Credible at all. It's really designed to spread good information, give people opportunities to network with each other, host events like this about Janet, but we have upcoming events. We have an upcoming event where we're hosting someone talking about things you might want to measure as a CCBHC, and it's completely just information sharing. We go around to a lot of conferences and we try to bring that knowledge back. So there's a link to join the community in the chat. And then consulting, we have a group of people, a growing team, in case you saw our earlier email today that we're hiring. Have a growing team of people who are experts at how to use data and available to help our agencies. Okay, we're going to start with a quick poll, and I'm going to figure out how to do it because I have a new computer and it's going to work great. And here we go. All right, stand by. All right, I'm going to pull this over here. We've got a poll. Okay. All right. For our beginning poll, we just want to know if you are currently using Janet DIY. It's fun to know who's here. Gosh, there's so many of y'all here. And also, wow, this is a poll people are answering very quickly. This might be a record. Thanks, everybody. Looks like we have a few people here who are actively using it, a couple people who've used it before, quite a few people who are interested but not yet using it, and then quite a few who are just learning about it. So Wow, you guys, everyone is very engaged today. I think almost everyone answered the poll. That was amazing. We have to do quicker polls. I think that's the lesson there. Sometimes our polls have long answers. So thanks, everybody. Cool. Okay. So thanks, everybody, for answering that. Okay. So back to talking about Janet DIY. Okay, so first of all, we kind of wanted to take you back in time a second. If you've been part of Mission Driven Data or using Janet for a while, you probably are familiar with the first time we made a big upgrade to Janet. So back in the olden days of like 2019 and 2020, Janet was just a program that you had to run on your own servers. So we only had an on-prem option. And so some of the early adopters of Janet were able to use Janet on-prem. They really liked it. There are still some agencies who do that where they have access to develop their own stuff and they could do it that way. But those agencies, in order to use Janet, had to have their own servers. They had to figure out all that access. They had to maintain those servers. So pretty soon after we started having more and more people using Janet, we started offering Janet in the cloud, which was awesome because you didn't need to have your own server. You could have access to all the same data tools. But the one downside of Janet in the cloud was that you didn't have as much access to build your own stuff. So Andrew and I had many conversations about this because we always wish we could make a middle path that would be all the advantages of both things. So you would have all the ability to do your own development and not have to have your own server. So that is really the origination of this idea of Janet DIY is how can we make it so you guys still don't have to have servers, but if you have someone on your team who wants to start building their own stuff with your data, they can do it. And so we worked Janet got better because Andrew worked really hard and many other people on the team worked really hard. And what were you going to say, Andrew? You're muted.
Oh no, I just agree with you. It was many people. It was so many people. It
So
was
many
not me.
people,
Yeah, yeah,
so many
yes.
people. This has been kind of our aspiration for a long time. I can remember at least one conversation where Andrew and I were just like, we've got to figure this out. There's got to be a way to do this. Like maybe from like back to maybe even like the first week that Andrew worked at Mission Driven Day. Like this has always been the thing we had wished we could do. And lots of people helped bring it to fruition, but we're really excited about it because what it means is back in the olden days, first of all, back in the olden days, you didn't have a choice. Then you did have a choice, but both choices had these downsides. And now really you can use Janet in our cloud, not have to buy your own server, and really be able to do all the same development that you'd be able to do from your local system if you did have a server. So it's going to be slightly different how you would do development, but we've really opened the door for you, for your own internal team to be able to do that development. And the cool thing about that is because that's how our team also does development on your behalf, there's some really great overlaps where if we worked on something and we built you a report and now your team is like, oh, we wish we could add something to that report, or we wish we could, combine this report with that report, you can actually, there's some piggybacking we can even do where like our code is the beginning, but then you build on that code. And with all these other data systems that we can now harvest for you and bring into Janet, you can also write your own code against that stuff and combine it with other things. And so it's this really cool, it's like we really want this to be very empowering to you. So it's not like, it's also like we're also we're making sure that you don't have to be stressed out. We're trying to make it not stressful for you because I think the other thing, and I don't know if Andrew, if you've thought about this, but I've been reflecting on sometimes at an agency, there's someone who's like a little bit interested in doing some coding, like a little bit curious about it or wants to try it out. And often if that's the situation, agencies are a little reluctant to go all in on like buying a server and setting up SQL and like giving them a dev environment and all this stuff when maybe they don't even know yet if that person is going to stick around or if they're really going to be into it or if it's going to catch on. And what I love about this is it's such lower risk. It's like you could try this out. You could have someone who's just like dabbling in data, and then they could grow into being able to use this without you having done a whole bunch of extra investing in building out infrastructure. So I think that's a better pathway. Like when I think back to when I was a clinician, when I first started to learn how to do data stuff, Um, I had the privilege of someone setting up an environment for me where I theoretically couldn't break everything and I could like learn. And I mean, I will say actually back then, the system I was using, I could break everything, but I just didn't know it. So it was less scary. Um, they never told me that if I messed things up and wrote a bad query, it could kick everyone out of the EHR. It's good things you don't know. I just thought it seemed surprising that sometimes when I was working really hard, the EHR would go down. It was very strange. But the cool thing about Janet DIY is it's this like low barrier way to expand your capacity internally to do this and also to help grow your team. What would you add, Andrew?
I think I would add that I like the growing your team part and your internal capacity because I think it's one of the findings that I had as we went through this process and we got to talk to folks at agencies who we normally don't talk to. Like it's a skill set of folks who aren't normally like in front of us day to day. I think I was pleased and surprised with how much farther a lot of agencies can grow their team with their existing resources. They folks that you may not even realize, are capable of doing this work, are oftentimes, sitting in plain sight at agencies, and you would have never thought to give them these abilities because of that initial investment that you were talking about. It is like I'm thinking about the licensing and the time, to get it all set up and all that jazz. Like coming from IT land, like I would have never, seen those people, and I know I've missed those people. So I think that capacity thing I really want to highlight. This gives folks the ability to try something, um, and most agencies I think have these folks hiding in plain sight.
Yeah, they're usually the people who are really good at VLOOKUPs. Because that's all we give them
Yeah.
access to. So they get really good at VLOOKUPs, but they're doing all kinds of stuff that you're like, oh gosh, if only we let you write some SQL, you might be able to do something here beyond a VLOOKUP. So I think about that, or people who have these like mountains of spreadsheets, because sometimes spreadsheets are just the best. Yeah, it's just if that's all people have access to, but they're maximizing the potential of that, then they're ready to try to do something more. Or even just people who have really questions they want, like that person who comes to you every day with a new idea for a report. Like, what if you could just say, go ahead and try that, go for it, instead of it being like, I'll add that to my list of things I'll try to figure out later. Cool. Okay. All right. So what is Janet DIY? So Janet DIY gives your team direct, secure access to the cloud, the data that's in our Janet cloud. So Janet, when you're running Janet in our cloud, which most people do now because it's so cool and awesome, we pull data out of Credible and then we have it set up in its own. Every agency has their own little. Think of it like a virtual machine, like their own magic machine that is their data, and it's hosted in Azure. And this Janet DIY system gives you access to create a secure connection to that data from your own computer and be interacting with that data. So it is designed for agencies that have some expertise with like understanding that like what data is a little bit, right? Because it's not like drag and drop. It's not like it's not going to look the way people are used to seeing things in some systems where it's like you don't even have to understand the data. You can just like pick all the things you want, but it is a way to have this direct access so you can ask questions of the data and get answers right away. So it connects directly to that Janet cloud. You can connect to it using Microsoft SQL Management Studio or Microsoft Power BI and pull that data directly into either of those things inside, you're manipulating it, working with it on your desktop. It's as if you're just like if you were using Janet on-prem, sometimes it's not like your Janet database is living on the computer you're on. You're like remoting in somehow to pull data in. It's just that we've created a secure tunnel to Janet Cloud to allow you to do that. So it lets you build your own queries, build your own data sets, build your own dashboards. You don't have to wait for us to do anything. And you can also, we'll get into this, but if you get really advanced, you can have those things set up to auto refresh as every time Janet runs so that you can have refreshing dashboards running off our Janet cloud that you built and you get to keep all the time. So, and what's really cool about this, I just like to brag about Andrew, is this is the first time Janet, like if you've ever run Janet yourself, the original Janet, The original beginning stage of Janet, when Janet was just pulling data out of Credible, it was just a thing you ran in a window that looked kind of like a DOS computer. And this version, this is like we have like an actual like little window that pops up for Janet Connect, which is really cool and fancy. So Janet Connect includes this like user interface. That's what that's called when there's an actual little window where you can connect to your data in the Janet cloud using this secure tunnel. Um, yeah. What else would you say about what is Janet DIY, Andrew?
I think one of the things that we've talked about in passing, but the buttons aren't there for, right? Aren't sitting there, is that this is the way this works is just like it does create that secure tunnel, and that secure tunnel makes your computer believe that the SQL server is just sitting right next to it, and chatting it up, right? So like while we're talking about SSMS and Power BI, there are applications for this, and I've been told other agencies have used it, where you could use this to say, connect to your DIY server from Visual Studio or Visual Studio VS Code instead of SSMS, or
Mhm.
you could use a different, application instead of Power BI. We certainly haven't tested all the possibilities, but from the technical standpoint, we intentionally designed this to be software agnostic. It's designed to be it's designed to make your computer think that our DIY server is right there and it's its little buddy, and answering all of its questions as it asks.
That brings up a good point that I'm not sure if there's a slide about, but since people might be sitting there thinking about this question anyway, I'll just mention um, the data you're accessing in your Janet DIY connection is technically your own copy of that database. It has some similarities with the data that's functioning that runs all of the mission driven data things that we might have built for you. Like it's got all of that in it too, but we set it up so that it's a little bit hard for you to break something that we have running off of something we built for you so that you're not losing some investment there, because we want you to feel like you can open this up to people, and we don't want there to be a risk that you're going to have someone with a wild streak who would do something silly like delete all your stuff. Yeah. So it's kind of like we created like a backup of your data that you guys get to use, that the other one is still safe too. So that's kind of cool. Oh, and while I'm at it, we don't charge extra for this. Isn't that nice? We don't charge any extra. It's so cool. It makes me so happy we get to do that. Okay. How Janet DIY works. So you open a thing. So you open a thing. You're going to hear the social work version of this, and then Andrew will say it more right. But basically, the way Connect works is you open a little program on your computer, and you click a little link to say make a secure connection, and then you get to pick what you want to open, and you can start writing queries to your data. So yeah, the little thing, like the little magic box will say like you're connected, and then you have this. So Andrew will say it right, but you have this magic connection to your data, and then you can just start writing queries. And it's like I personally think it's like magic. But explain how it's not like magic, Andrew.
I like the idea that if people think it's magic, because that was really the idea behind it. I wanted it like when we went through the beta process, and as we ran into issues with people figuring out how to connect, and we ran into plenty of those up front, right? There were a lot of problems we had to solve. Like the goal that we always had was, how can we make this well, I don't think I ever thought, how can we make this like magic? But like certainly we thought, how can we make this so intuitive that it just works for people, so that you press the button and it goes. So if folks see this and they think magic, that's awesome because that was at the end of the day our goal. I guess like what I would hope, or the words, if I were to add any technical detail to that, would be that all the underlying, the entire stack, all the whole technology stack under it, it does a ton of really cool things, all of which I want to be transparent and open about talking about. But I think the whole point behind all of this was that you don't have to understand that whole stack to understand that you press the button and then it goes. And that like that's the beauty of what I think we've built, that it took forever to figure out, but I think I'm really proud that we got there.
Yeah, yeah, we really wanted it to be So that someone who, I mean, I always say like I'm just a social worker, I'm not a technology person, but I do run a data company. So at this point, I do know a little bit more technical stuff. But still, when I see something like this, I'm like, if I saw this when I was a clinician, I would just be like, this is magic. I just push the magic button and now I have my data and I can write queries. So anyway, I think that was the experience we wanted people to have. And I'm so excited we get to offer it. Okay, there's a cool question in the chat, which is just to confirm, any stored procedures or other data, other articulation of data, look, see, other people know how to use big words, that may break something will not affect MDD powered dashboards and Power BI when accessed in this new method. That I would say that's true. So like basically we really thought about that, right? Because we're like, if we're going to give people a magic button where they can connect to their data, they'll be real sad if the first thing they do is break everything they paid us to build. So instead, that's why we're creating like a parallel kind of, you get your own parallel universe with your data. It's still your data. And we match anything we've done on our side over to you so you can build on top of things we've built. So anything that's functioning on your main data stream that we've built to power your dashboards over there is still happening over there. But then we've made this copy that also runs it that you can do things on and break it if you want over there. And it's not going to break it over here. So two distinct machines, literally machines that we're hosting for you. You get like a duplicate of your Janet and we aren't charging you any money. Isn't that so cool? So cool. So cool. So yeah. Because we decided, right, Andrew? Remember we talked about this. Like it doesn't work if people break things like that. That's like we can't have it. It's not helping anyone if we're like, here you go, have fun, and now you can break everything. Like we didn't want to do that, right?
No, and I mean, it makes it harder for us too. Like we don't want to, like,
Yeah.
because now we have to fix it. So, I mean, we
Yeah.
don't want you to be able to break it. And the way that all of these machines are set up is that we do, and there are certain gotchas here where we would want like to speak to agencies before they did certain things, but we do try to set up these environments so that they do bounce back pretty quickly. So there are a lot of things that and we know from experience because we can do it. Like we could accidentally break something on our own environment that powers your dashboards, and we've designed it in a way that okay, we broke that, but then tonight our automations bring it back. So we have a lot of automations and a lot of reprovisioning that fix things that when we break things on our own, that get fixed. That we brought those lessons over to DIY as well. So even if hypothetically you do break something on your end, there are a lot of things in the eaves waiting to catch you and prevent that from staying broken for too long.
Right. Like things like I'll just share an example. Like one way you can kind of tie up a machine is if you're running a query and you forgot that you were running that query and it's still running and it's been running for 8 hours. And now the machine is just kind of like, I don't know what you want me to do. I've been running this query for 8 hours. So we have a process where overnight it kind of like says like, nah, if it's been running for 8 hours, like let's start over. And then also like clear some of the history so it's not holding all that cache and start you back again. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
how do we get access to Janet and will there be training about running queries? So when I'm talking about Janet, I'm talking about so Janet right now includes data from Credible and also any other integrations you're pulling data from, including data you're uploading. So how you get access to that data is through this Janet DIY where you have this magic button that you push to connect. So if you already use Janet at your agency, sorry, I don't know who that question, I'm not familiar with the name I'm seeing in the chat. So I'm not sure if this particular question is someone who is already using Janet. If your agency isn't using Janet, you do have to have Janet. So Janet DIY is based on Janet, which is a program that agencies contract with us to do, right? Like it's a licensed product. It's just that if you're using Janet, then
Mhm.
yeah, if you want to use, we're going to talk about how you get hooked up with Janet DIY. So that's what we're going to go through next. So if you still have questions after that, please pop back in and let me know. There's a good question, which is an excellent question about will at some point this become a paid feature? Can we count on this being included? We do not have any intention to charge money for it. Our principle about features for Janet is that if we can find a way to just include new features with your existing Janet license, we do that. So things like I've already mentioned, like appointment reminders, even the Janet Cloud was not part of originally what came with Janet. And to every extent possible, we try to just include that. The only time I can think of, I guess if I'm really being creative, if there was an agency who was like, well, we want 15 different Janet DIYs. We want 15 different
Right.
machines for everybody on our team because we're worried they're going to break each other's things. That might be something where we would talk about like a cost sharing model because, for us to create you an extra machine is like negligible. But if we're talking, I don't know, 100 machines, we want 100 Janet machines, then that's not a negligible cost. But generally speaking, that's the principle we try to follow with everything. And I'm assuming there's a joke in the comments. Sorry, not everyone can see that comment. I'm assuming that's a joke. That someone thinks our company I don't know how to explain this joke. It's just a funny joke about someone saying that I think they're trying to say we're cool. I think I'm going to interpret it to be that. Yeah, I think I do want to just again just I'm so excited there's so many people here and that you guys are excited about it because I think um like it sounds too good to be true. So we really just want you guys to like understand what it is and know how you would get it set up because this is one of those situations where like I get that it probably sounds too good to be true and we want you to know what it actually is because that is like something everyone is wary of and I get that. So I do. But yeah, we don't have any plans to charge for it. But again, I guess if someone came to us and said we want 100 Janet DIY machines, I might say, oh, well, maybe we can talk about that. But this idea of you having an extra machine that you can use to do your own development is fully intended to be included with Janet. So yeah. Okay, cool. So what's happening behind the scenes? Again, like I think we've already kind of talked about this, but each agency has a dedicated environment. It's actually a separate dedicated environment from the environment that's running your like, we could call it like your production Janet or your like,
Primary.
official Janet. What would you call it, Andrew?
I've been calling it primary, the primary
Your
Janet,
primary.
and
Ooh, primary. Good
yep,
word.
yeah.
Yeah, so you have your primary Janet and then you have your DIY Janet. The access is limited by network location and connections are encrypted. So I know there have been some questions about the network location thing with people who have IP addresses that move around sometimes. Andrew, do you want to answer that question or do you want to wait until later?
I'm happy to, but I mean, it's our preference, and so far we haven't run into an issue with it to lock down access by IP, so that, and it's mostly it is 100% for security, for your security, not necessarily it's certainly not convenience on our side because it's extra work, but so it's our preference to limit that, and typically agencies do have IP addresses that tend not to change because of the service level they pay for their internet connection. But a lot of times, especially folks who work from home for their agency and who have an agency who maybe doesn't have some sort of work from home VPN setup, will have their own, outgoing IP addresses, and we work with you to take those as well. Those IP addresses actually usually don't change all that often, and we don't have too much of an issue adding those in and then just keeping them updated when or if they do change. It's a
Cool.
and we so hard like so far we have not run into anyone who's been unable to do that. Like the only scenario I can think of someone who would totally been able to do that would be if you're on a mobile connection, like you're using your phone. That's
Like you're
guaranteed to
tethered.
change. Yeah, 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 and that's all you use ever. That's guaranteed to change pretty frequently. But we certainly haven't run into that.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Awesome. And connections are encrypted. So just we're being very careful about security and all that good stuff. Um, how is access set up? So we do this based on you guys telling us who your approved users are. The standard access includes 5 users. So this comes back to that question Larissa had about cost. We assume 5 users is going to be enough for most people. Again, if you told me we have 100 users, maybe we would need to talk about whether there's some cost sharing there. But most agencies we assume are going to have, I would say, less than 20 users. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't handle that, right? So standard access is 5 users. I would recommend starting with 5 users, honestly, because then you're going to work out all the bugs and get everything figured out for those people before you spread it out too far. We ask that every agency have a designated point person who is basically, we want to make sure that you guys have someone who can let us know if there's been a staffing change. So if someone who had access to Janet DIY leaves, we want you to let us know so that we can disconnect their access to Janet DIY too. So you would designate a point person for handling any user changes. And then we grant access to that. One comment I did want to share here was if you are like the only person at your agency who would want access, and you're going to be the only person with access, we do ask that there be like one other person at your agency who is in charge of that, because what if you leave? Then we need someone who would tell us that you had left. So, but yeah, that's kind of how that works. Anything you would add to that one, Andrew?
No, that last part is the one thing I wanted to add. So
Cool. Okay. Okay. So what can you do with Janet DIY? You can write SQL queries to actually pull data and look at those queries, the results of those queries. You can build dashboards in Power BI, and you can also build a reusable library of code that is refreshed nightly. We have that set up to work with a GitHub repository. Some agencies are doing that now, so they have a GitHub repository. We look in that. A GitHub repository sounds fancy. It's literally a folder of the things you want to have happen, right? That's how we do our development, by the way, too. We use GitHub for ourselves. It's a folder with a list of things we want to have run after Janet runs. You can build your own list and it will work. It'll run everything we normally run, and then it'll run everything you run. So you can have that be built. You can maintain it. You can change it yourself. Like it's very much like available to you. And you can also then use that code to create your own custom tables and data sets that then build on each other. So, yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Andrew?
no, well, actually, Chris, I think asked in the chat
Oh,
a pretty great question that applies to this.
oh, are we able to access the work of other users? Good question. What do you think, Andrew?
I think so. The if you other users at your agency, yes, certainly not other users that are not at your agency, but the way that you would make sure that SQL runs every night would be to add that SQL file that you want to run to a particular spot in your GitHub repository. And that's, by the way, we would create for you. So we would create that repository for you and then add you in. And anybody else who has SQL would also be able to add, their files to that folder. And then that actually extends to the work we do for you as well, because any code that we have written for you doesn't live in your repository in its main spot, but it does live in one of our repositories that's accessible just to us. And every day we duplicate that over to you, which means you don't just have access to your data and the data that's created from our code, but you actually have access, read-only access to the code that we write for you every day. So you have you can actually see the SQL that we have written that's powering all the dashboards that we've built that are sitting on your primary Janet Cloud machine.
It's so cool. I can't believe we're doing that. It's amazing we figured out how to do that. I can't, it's so cool. It makes me so happy. Cool. Um, yeah, we really, this, I feel like, this seems like a technical solution, but it's really this it's like this enabling thing, right? Like we're really trying to like get things in your hands that you guys can do good things with. And when you said, are we able to access the work of others, Chris, you made me think about down the road. Of course, it's our dream that each of you will find cool things you're doing with data and want to share with each other. And then we can have guest speaker sessions where you talk about the cool thing that you're doing and share that with other people too. So that's a good question. Alex has a question about committing changes to the GitHub repo. Would be using our software, would be done with other tools. I'm not sure if I know the answer. What do you think, Andrew?
For when it comes to committing code to GitHub, you can use whatever tool is compatible specifically with GitHub. So there are any number of ways to manage a GitHub repository. The repo does need to be on GitHub, but because we've written a lot of software that interacts with the GitHub API, but outside of that, anything that you have you've built on your own, or anything that you have you can download online that will interact with the GitHub repository, totally legit, and you'll be able to use it. This will be, though, for DIY users, this is a repository that, just for the sake of durability, like keeping things going and stuff not breaking, this is a repository that we will own, that you have access to, and you can see everything you want. You can copy everything out of there if you want. So we're not owning it to keep you from doing something. We're owning it in terms so that we can keep our own systems together and we understand like all of our systems work. But the reason I mention that is that means that you won't necessarily have ownership rights for the repo that we share with you. You'll have read write access, of course, but you any tools that you might have that require administrative abilities maybe won't work. But certainly, if you want to just use whatever utility you want that will interact with a regular old GitHub repository, you'll certainly be able to do that.
So glad you're here, Andrew. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so is Janet DIY a good fit? So these are some of the things we wanted to think we were thinking about if you were evaluating this. It's cool if you have someone who has a little bit of SQL or Power BI experience. I did want to mention if you have team members who are still writing queries in like the ad hoc query builder incredible, that is SQL. That's what they're doing. They're doing SQL. So if you have people who are doing that a little bit, that would be a good fit. If you want some more flexibility with what you're doing, some self-directed analysis, maybe you have in your Janet, you have some financial data flowing in, you have some, I don't know, some HR data, some other things flowing in, and you want to be able to pull some of your own reports off of that without working with us, you could use it for that. But also just if you have staff who like to explore and iterate. So like you have people who like want to try things and want to explore things and want to figure some things out on their own. We did bring up things that might be worth considering and maybe wouldn't be such a great fit would be if you have people who have no interest or experience with any of that and don't want to do it. That's probably not a good fit. If you have folks who are really looking for a truly drag and drop kind of situation, I think I mentioned that earlier. It's not drag and drop. It's the same tools we use to write code. I would say Power BI is kind of drag and droppy, but it's good to keep in mind that if you're when we pull data into Power BI, we often have built a custom data set using some SQL. That doesn't mean you can't do that with something called Power Query Editor in Power BI, which is a very powerful way to manipulate data that doesn't require SQL. So I just wanted to mention that, if you decided you're at a stage of life where you never want to learn SQL, you can learn Power Query Editor and it can do basically all the same things. And it is a little bit more of a user interface than writing code. And then the other one would just be, if it might not be a good fit if you're looking for a simple replacement for standard dashboards. So if your idea is we're going to start from scratch and build a whole bunch of stuff to replace something that already exists, I don't know that would be the right thing to use. It's not necessarily meant for that, right? It's meant for, kind of a, yeah, although I would say you could use it for replacing dashboards if, let's say, you were trying to wrap up using Credible BI or Yellowfin and you wanted to build everything over in Power BI, this would be good for that. It would be more if you're thinking about you have Janet and you have these really complicated reports that people have built for you and kind of you have someone new who wants to start over everything from scratch, which is just, I don't know if I would ever recommend that. So, yeah, you take advantage of the work we've done. We want you to. Anything else you would add there, Andrew?
No, I think these are really great takeaways, and we got these from the beta testing itself. These are legit learned outcomes from our actual beta tests where we ran into agencies who were a good fit and agencies who weren't based on this information. Yeah.
I did want to add one more thing that's not on the slide, but it made me think of it just now is one thing I wanted to say is if you're going to give someone access to do this and they are the sort of curious, interested type, but they are just learning, it is really helpful to let them set aside some time to practice and work on it. So writing SQL or learning Power BI, just learning any new thing is really hard if you're just trying to squeeze it in 5 minutes and then you just keep having frustrating experiences. So this is more of a general principle of if you're having someone who's trying to learn how to do more technical things or do something that's a little complicated or new, I recommend giving them solid time to work on it. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to skip around a tiny bit here. Hang on. So I wanted to talk about what it looks like to get started. So to get started, we have a really short setup survey that you can fill out. You identify users and an access approver. You install SQL Management Studio and Power BI Desktop. Those are both free tools to install on your desktop. But of course, this is where sometimes agencies get stuck because you do have to have an IT person who will let you install a program on your computer, right? Or they need to install it for you. And then start exploring your data. And again, this is free or slash included with existing Janet users. I do have the actual survey pulled up here. Can you guys see that? So it's just a little form. I was just going to kind of walk through it together. So we'll see. Oh, well, I'm going to cheat and do it for us. So it's your agency name. It's your name, your email address. Ooh, what if I don't know my GitHub username, Andrew? What should I do?
It's not required. You don't have to have a GitHub username to complete this form. In fact, like when we first created Janet DIY, this was not a question that we asked.
Okay, so it would only be if you already know your GitHub username.
And you may not even want to be part, like you can
Maybe you
use
won't
Janet
even do
DIY
that
without
part.
writing code. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Do you use a static IP address? So this is one where you might want to ask someone in IT if you use a static IP address. We do. Or you could say you're not sure. And then you list out your users. And so for each user, you would say their first and last name, their email address, their home IP if they're going to connect from home, their GitHub username if you have it. And so we've given you the 5 spots to put that information there. I don't actually know if it'll make me fill something. I'm going to skip that one and see. There we go. And then this is the access contact. So this is the person who is like the arbiter of, what's a good word? This is the person who can say, take away their access or give this person access. It can be one of those 5 users. So I didn't mean to say that it has to be someone who's not one of those 5 users. It's just that if you only have one user, you can't be also the access person. There has to be like some, what's the word for that, Andrew? When you have a backup. Um, oh, I'll think of it later. Uh, when you have 2 things. Designee, yeah, that's a good one, Gail. Yeah, designee would work. Oh, yeah, and you do have to have a designee. So I will put in me for now. Next, and then I'm done. And that's it. That's all you got to do. Cool. All right, so that's all that's needed to get started. And we're monitoring those.